As he worked to stabilize her for the journey, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that his life had just changed irrevocably. In the ruins of humanity's greatest war, he'd found something unexpected, not salvage, but perhaps something far more valuable. He just hoped they'd both live long enough to find out what that might be. Breaking the language barrier. Marcus's hidden shelter wasn't much. A reinforced basement in the ruins of an old research facility, carefully shielded from both radiation and detection. But as he helped the alien through the decontamination chamber, it might as well have been a palace from the way she looked at it. Her luminescent patterns pulsed with what he was beginning to recognize as relief. "Home sweet home," he said, helping her to the medical cot. "At least until we figure out what to do with you." 3 days had passed since he'd found her, and her physical recovery was nothing short of miraculous. The wounds that should have killed her had already healed into faint silver lines across her lavender skin. The alien, whom he'd started calling Nova because of the way her skin patterns brightened like starlight when she was excited, watched intently as he checked the shelter's security systems. She mimicked his movements, her slender fingers tracing the same patterns on the air that he made on the control panel. "Quick study, aren't you?" Marcus said, noticing her interest. He pulled up the shelter's basic systems interface and gestured for her to come closer. "Here, let me show you how it works." Nova approached cautiously, her head tilted in curiosity. As Marcus demonstrated the simple commands, her eyes widened with recognition. Suddenly, her hands flew across the interface with practiced ease, pulling up system diagnostics he didn't even know existed. "Well, I'll be damned," Marcus whispered. "You're not just a refugee. You're an engineer, aren't you?" Nova turned to him, frustration evident in her expression. She placed her hand over his heart again, and this time the mental connection was stronger. Images flooded his mind. Massive ships with technology far beyond anything he'd seen, laboratories filled with creatures like her working on equipment that seemed to bend reality itself. But behind these images lurked shadows of violence, of betrayal, of a desperate flight from something that made her patterns dim with fear. "Easy," Marcus said, steadying her as the connection broke. "You're safe here. We'll figure this out." Over the next few days, they developed a crude form of communication. Nova proved to be brilliant at pattern recognition, quickly learning to associate his words with objects and actions. She couldn't reproduce human speech. Her vocal structures were too different, but she could make her meaning clear through a combination of gestures, mental images, and by manipulating her bioluminescent patterns. Marcus learned that her species, which she called the Lumini, had been neutral during the stellar wars, focusing instead on scientific advancement. But they discovered something that made them targets. Nova's patterns turned dark and chaotic whenever she tried to explain exactly what it was, the mental images becoming jumbled and painful. One evening, as they shared a meal of synthesized proteins, Nova's system, thankfully, could process human food. She suddenly grabbed Marcus's hand. The mental connection formed instantly, but this time it was different. Instead of showing him memories, she was trying to teach him something. Marcus felt his mind stretch as Nova carefully introduced new concepts, new ways of thinking about energy and matter. He began to understand that the Lumini didn't just absorb radiation. They could manipulate it at a fundamental level, reshaping it into pure energy. It was this ability that had made them targets. "Your people," Marcus said slowly, "they found a way to control energy itself, didn't they? That's why you're being hunted." Nova's patterns pulsed in confirmation. She pulled up the shelter's power systems on the interface and, with a look of intense concentration, placed her hand on the panel. The readings spiked, then stabilized at 200% efficiency. She had just doubled their power supply simply by redirecting and purifying the ambient energy. Marcus sat back, stunned. If the ROM people get hold of this capability, he didn't need to finish the thought. The stellar wars had nearly destroyed humanity. A power source this potent could reignite the conflict on an even larger scale. Nova's patterns dimmed as she slumped in exhaustion. The energy manipulation had clearly cost her. Marcus caught her before she could fall, and for a moment, they stayed there, closer than they'd been before. Her skin was warm now, unlike the cold day he'd found her, and her patterns created dancing lights across his arms. Through their contact, he felt her confusion, her gratitude, and something else, a growing feeling that mirrored his own increasingly complicated emotions. They were from different worlds, different species, but in this moment, those differences seemed to matter less than what they shared: curiosity, determination, and a growing trust that defied explanation. A sudden alarm from the security system broke the moment. Someone, or something, was approaching the shelter's outer perimeter. Nova's patterns flared with fear as she recognized the energy signature. Her pursuers had found them. Marcus quickly activated the shelter's camouflage systems, his mind racing. He had come to care for Nova more than he'd expected, and he'd be damned if he'd let anyone harm her. But as he looked at the approaching energy signatures on his scanner, he realized this wasn't going to be a simple fight. Whatever was coming for them wasn't human, and it wasn't alone. "Well," he said, checking his weapons while Nova frantically worked at the interface, presumably trying to mask their energy signature, "I guess we're about to find out just how good your people's technology really is." The look she gave him was equal parts terror and determination. Whatever was coming, they would face it together. Survival and secrets. The shelter's walls trembled as another energy pulse hit the outer shields. Marcus watched in amazement as Nova's hands danced across the interface, her patterns pulsing rapidly as she redirected power to maintain their defenses. The hunters outside, creatures she had identified as the Vorkath, were using weapons that should have vaporized the shelter's shields instantly. Instead, Nova was somehow absorbing and redistributing their attacks. "How long can you keep this up?" Marcus asked, knowing she'd understand his meaning if not his words. Nova's patterns flickered weakly. She was reaching her limits. Through their brief mental contact, he felt her exhaustion and fear, but also her fierce determination. The scanner showed 5 Vorkath signatures surrounding them. Their attackers looked humanoid on thermal imaging, but their energy readings were off the charts. Marcus had fought in the latter days of the Stellar Wars, but he'd never seen anything like this. Nova suddenly stopped her work at the interface, her patterns shifting to a deep purple he'd never seen before. She turned to Marcus and grabbed his hands, initiating the strongest mental connection they'd shared yet. This time, she wasn't just showing him images, she was downloading information directly into his mind. The knowledge hit him like a physical blow. The Lumini hadn't just discovered a way to manipulate energy. They'd found a way to access what Nova's people called the underlying fabric, the fundamental forces that held the universe together. It was a discovery that could end energy scarcity forever, or create weapons that could unmake entire solar systems. The Vorkath were former allies who had betrayed the Lumini, wanting to use the discovery for conquest. They had attacked without warning, wiping out most of Nova's people. She was one of the few survivors who carried not just the knowledge, but the genetic modifications that allowed direct manipulation of these forces. "That's why they want you alive," Marcus gasped as the connection broke. "You're not just a scientist. You're the key to their weapons program." Nova's patterns swirled in confirmation, but she wasn't done. She pulled up a hidden diagnostic screen and showed him something that made his blood run cold. The Vorkath weren't just trying to break in, they were setting up a device that would create a containment field around the shelter. Once activated, it would trap them in a bubble of altered space-time. They would be caught like insects in amber, alive but helpless. Marcus checked his weapons again, useless against enemies who could manipulate fundamental forces, but he'd learned long ago that superior technology didn't always guarantee victory. Sometimes, the oldest solutions were the best ones. "Nova," he said, placing his hands on her shoulders, "I need you to trust me. Can you create a feedback loop in their containment field? Make it look like your powers are failing." Her patterns shifted in confusion, then understanding. She nodded, her fingers already moving across the interface. Marcus quickly retrieved a package from his emergency supplies. Old-fashioned mining charges, electromagnetically shielded and virtually undetectable to advanced scanners. The shelter shook more violently as Nova deliberately weakened their defenses. Through the scanner, Marcus watched the Vorkath move closer, concentrating their efforts on the containment field. They were so focused on their complex energy manipulations that they didn't notice him slipping the charges through maintenance tunnels to strategic points around the shelter. Nova's patterns had faded to an almost ghostly pale lavender, her strength nearly depleted. The containment field was almost complete. Marcus took her hand, squeezing it gently. "Ready?" She squeezed back, and in that brief contact, he felt her complete trust in him. It was a heady feeling, and for a moment, he almost forgot about the life-or-death situation they were in. Almost. Marcus hit the detonator. The charges exploded simultaneously, sending shockwaves through the ground. The Vorkath's precious containment field shattered as the carefully calculated explosion disrupted their positioning. Two of them were caught in the blast directly, their advanced shields useless against the primitive but powerful explosives. Nova seized the moment, drawing on her last reserves of strength. Her patterns blazed like captured lightning as she turned the Vorkath's own energy manipulation against them. The remaining hunters found their weapons backfiring, their shields collapsing as Nova forced the energy to flow in impossible directions. The battle was over in seconds. Where 5 Vorkath had stood, there was nothing left but scorched earth and scattered pieces of advanced technology. But the victory had come at a cost. Nova collapsed, her patterns barely visible. Marcus caught her, his heart pounding as he felt how cold her skin had become. "Stay with me," he whispered, carrying her to the medical cot. "We won this round, but I know there will be more coming. I need you. We need each other." As he worked to stabilize her condition, Marcus realized 2 things. First, they couldn't stay here. The Vorkath would send more hunters, and next time they wouldn't underestimate human ingenuity. Second, and more troubling, he had fallen in love with her. Not just her abilities or her brilliant mind, but her courage, her determination, and the way her patterns danced when she smiled at him. Nova's hand weakly caught his as he adjusted the medical sensors. Through their contact, he felt a wave of emotions that mirrored his own, along with a single clear thought. She had chosen him long before this battle, from the moment he had shown her kindness in the ruins. As her patterns slowly strengthened, Marcus began planning their next move. They had won this fight through the combination of her advanced abilities and his primitive tactics. But to survive what was coming, they would need more than that. They would need allies, resources, and most importantly, they would need to find a way to protect Nova's knowledge from those who would abuse it. Looking down at her sleeping form, watching her patterns shift in response to her dreams, Marcus made a silent vow. Whatever came next, they would face it together. Human and Lumini, bound not by species or origin, but by something far stronger: trust, loyalty, and a love that defied the very laws of the universe they were struggling to protect. The choice. 2 weeks of running had taught Marcus and Nova many things. First, that the Vorkath's reach extended far beyond what either had imagined. Second, that Nova's abilities were still growing, evolving in ways that both excited and terrified her. And third, that surviving meant making impossible choices. They had found temporary refuge in an abandoned military bunker deep in the Austral Mountains. The facility's ancient quantum shielding, combined with Nova's energy manipulation, made it virtually undetectable. But they both knew it was only a matter of time before they were found again. Marcus watched as Nova worked with the bunker's outdated systems, her patterns creating mesmerizing displays across the dim room. She had learned to project her thoughts more clearly now, allowing them to communicate almost effortlessly. What she showed him today made his heart stop. "You want to do what?" he asked, hoping he had misunderstood the complex stream of images and emotions she had shared. Nova's patterns pulsed with determination as she clarified her plan. "The Lumini's greatest discovery, The ability to manipulate the universe's fundamental forces wasn't just coded into her genes. It was a living thing, evolving within her. And she believed she could share it, not just with her own kind, but with humans who possessed the right genetic markers. With him. "It could kill you," Marcus said, his voice rough with emotion. The energy transfer alone. Nova's patterns shifted to a deep, resolute blue. Through their connection, she showed him what would happen if the Vorkath succeeded in capturing her. Worlds burning. Civilizations falling. The very fabric of space-time twisted into weapons of unimaginable destruction. Then she showed him another possibility. A future where humans and Lumini work together, using their combined knowledge to heal rather than destroy. But that future required a bridge between their species. It required someone who could understand both worlds. It required them. A proximity alarm shattered the moment. Nova's patterns flared with anxiety as she checked the sensors. The Vorkath battle fleet had entered the solar system, far larger than anything they'd encountered before. This wasn't just a hunting party. This was an invasion force. "How long do we have?" Marcus asked, already knowing the answer wouldn't be good. Nova's response came in a burst of images, less than 6 hours before the fleet would be in position to begin a systematic sweep of the planet. This time, they wouldn't bother with precision strikes or containment fields. They would sterilize entire regions to flush them out. Marcus felt the weight of millions of lives pressing down on him. The choice Nova offered wasn't just about them anymore. It was about giving humanity a fighting chance against an enemy they didn't even know existed yet. "What do you need me to do?" he asked. Nova's patterns brightened with love and fear in equal measure. She led him to the center of the bunker's main chamber, where she had modified the old power systems into something new, something that pulsed with possibilities. The procedure would take hours, she explained. The genetic transfer had to be precise, controlled. Too much energy would kill them. Too little would fail to create the necessary changes. And she would have to maintain absolute concentration while fighting off the effects on her own body. "And if it works?" Marcus asked, though he could already see the answer in her swirling patterns. They would be truly linked, able to share not just thoughts and feelings, but power itself. Together, they might be strong enough to face what was coming. Apart, they would certainly fail. Marcus looked at the woman he had fallen in love with, this brilliant, brave being from beyond the stars who had trusted him when she had every reason to fear humans. He thought about all they had been through, all they had learned from each other. Human ingenuity and determination combined with Lumini wisdom and power. "Do it," he said. Nova's patterns exploded into a rainbow of colors as she began the procedure. The pain was immediate and overwhelming. But through it, Marcus felt something else, a sense of connection not just to Nova, but to the very forces she had shown him. The fundamental energies that bound the universe together seemed to sing in his blood. As his consciousness began to fade, he saw Nova's patterns synchronize with his own racing heartbeat. In that moment, he understood that whatever happened next, they had already changed the course of both their species' histories. They had proven that love truly could transcend the boundaries of worlds. The last thing he felt before darkness took him was Nova's fierce determination and a promise that echoed in his mind. Together, they would find a way to save them all. Above them, the Vorkath fleet moved into attack position, unaware that in a hidden bunker far below, two beings from different worlds were about to change the rules of warfare forever. The real question was, would Marcus survive the transformation in time to make a difference? New horizons, Marcus awoke to a world transformed. Every atom around him pulsed with visible energy, patterns of force that he had never been able to see before. His body felt simultaneously lighter than air and more powerful than he could have imagined. But what took his breath away was Nova. She stood at the bunker's control interface, her patterns now perfectly visible to his enhanced senses. She was beautiful in ways he hadn't even been able to perceive before. A living constellation of energy and light. When she turned to him, Her patterns synchronized with his own newfound energy signature, creating a harmony that defied description. "It worked," he said, his voice carrying undertones that rippled through the energy field around them. Nova's joy blazed through their now permanent connection, but there was no time to celebrate. The Vorkath fleet had begun its attack. Through their shared consciousness, they watched as the first wave of energy weapons descended toward Earth's atmosphere. Nova's knowledge flowed through Marcus's mind, teaching him in seconds what had taken her people generations to learn. Together, they reached out with their combined powers. The Vorkath weapons didn't just stop. They unraveled. Marcus's military experience combined with Nova's scientific understanding allowed them to identify and exploit weaknesses in the energy patterns that their enemies had never considered. Human tactical thinking merged with Lumini power, creating something entirely new. "They've noticed," Marcus said, feeling the shift in the fleet's energy signatures. The Vorkath were no longer simply hunting. Now they were afraid. Nova's response came not in words but in pure concept. Let them fear. Through their bond, she showed him the next step of their plan. It was audacious, dangerous, and exactly the kind of impossible thing that humans were known for attempting. They'd moved as one, their combined energy signatures reaching up through the atmosphere. The Vorkath's advanced shields meant nothing against their power. Marcus and Nova weren't trying to destroy their technology. They were speaking to it, rewriting the fundamental forces that made it work. Across the fleet, weapons systems shut down. Shield generators reversed polarity. The mighty warships that had threatened Earth became nothing more than elaborate containers of confused and frightened Vorkath warriors. But they weren't finished. Nova had seen what humanity could be, had fallen in love not just with Marcus but with humanity's potential. Through their connection, she guided him deeper into the power they now shared. Together, they reached out to the other hidden Lumini survivors scattered across the galaxy. The message they sent was simple but profound. "Come. We have found another way. We have found hope." The Vorkath fleet hummed disabled in orbit as the first Lumini ships began arriving. Not warships, but vessels of learning and healing. They had been waiting, watching, hoping for a sign that their discovery could be used for creation rather than destruction. Hours later, as the sunrise painted the sky in colors that Marcus could now see in entirely new ways, he stood with Nova at the bunker's entrance. Her hand was warm in his, their energy patterns dancing together in perfect harmony. "What happens now?" he asked, though he could feel the answer through their bond. Nova's response flowed through him in waves of emotion and knowledge. The Lumini would share their understanding of the universe's fundamental forces, while humanity would share their creativity, their determination, and their unique way of seeing possibilities where others saw only obstacles. Together, they would build something unprecedented, a civilization that bridged the gap between two species and opened doors to countless others. Through their connection, Marcus saw the future they had helped create. Hybrid cities where human ingenuity merged with Lumini energy manipulation, new forms of art that existed in dimensions they were only beginning to understand, and most importantly, a lasting peace built on mutual understanding and respect. The Vorkath threat wasn't over. There would always be those who sought to use power for destruction, but they had shown the galaxy another path. In coming together, human and Lumini had become something greater than either could have been alone. Nova's patterns shifted to show him one last vision. Children, neither fully human nor fully Lumini, but something gloriously new. Their patterns would shine with human determination and Lumini wisdom, pioneers of a future that neither of their species could have imagined alone. Marcus pulled her close, their energy fields merging in a dance of light and power. He had started this journey as a simple salvage scout, looking for artifacts in the ruins of war. Instead, he had found something far more precious, a love that transcended species, a power that could reshape worlds, and a future bright with possibilities. Together, he said, the word carrying echoes of both human speech and Lumini energy patterns. Nova's response surrounded him in waves of light and love. Together, always. Above them, the morning sky filled with the arrival of more Lumini ships, their energy signatures a promise of new beginnings. Earth's first public contact with alien life wouldn't be marked by war or conquest, but by the love between two beings who had dared to bridge the gap between their worlds. As they prepared to face the challenges ahead, Marcus reflected that this was humanity's greatest strength, not the ability to fight or survive, but the capacity to love, to grow, and to become more than they had been. In Nova, he had found not just a partner, but a whole new understanding of what was possible when hearts and minds opened to new horizons. The sun rose fully over the mountains, its light refracting through their combined energy fields in ways that no human eye had ever seen before. It was the dawn of a new era, not just for them, but for all those who would follow the path they had forged together. In the end, it hadn't been weapons or technology that had saved them, but the simplest and most human of acts, offering food to someone in need, choosing trust over fear, and falling in love despite all the reasons not to. That was the real power that would reshape the galaxy, one heart at a time.